Hello there, my name is Hydo and welcome to the Pantheon, where Innistrad opened its crypt and all sorts of horrible things are leaking out of it, including an angel that we thought was dead for about a couple of thousand years, but now it's back. Why? I'm not sure. The story hasn't been revealed yet. It's Liesa. Liesa needs braces. Forgotten Archangel. 5 mana for a 4/5 flying lifelink angel. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, return that card to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. If a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. So, nice bit of graveyard hate. You know, she hates things dying. She just goes, go off into the hell vault with you. And, you know, rebuying your creatures that, you know, may die, you know, a couple of cool enter the battlefield effects. We can do quite a bit of nice things with this card. Really cool, you know, lifelink, 4/5 flyer, that's a threat in itself. So potentially you could go down to sort of aggro commander route, although it is 5 mana. But I've got, it's more of a gradual sort of value deck in mind. If you want to see, come along with me. And please do subscribe to my channel. I'm going to make one of these for every Dungeons. No, not Dungeons and Dragons. I've already done that one. Every one of them is done. This is going to be every Innistrad commander I'm going to do a video on. So come and join me. And then everything else after that. So without further ado, let's have a look at my top 5 for Liesa, who needs braces. And then at number 5, we've got Fleshbag Marauder. And it has to be this artwork. I love this artwork. The big pile of flesh. It just looks fantastic. I love it. I love his little foots that sort of like, yeah, brilliant. 3 mana for a zombie warrior, 3/1. When it comes into play, each player sacrifices a creature. So with our commander's ability, you know, to return them at end of turn, we can get this back to our hand because the thing is, we choose what we sacrifice. So most of the time, you're going to sacrifice the Fleshbag Marauder. And, you know, the 3/1 will go to the graveyard, then come back to your hand, and then you can do it next turn. Maybe if you give everything flash, you can keep doing it every single one of your opponent's turns to the play a creature. But the cool thing about this is you can choose to sacrifice something else. So maybe you have a good enter the battlefield effect that you want to reuse. You can sacrifice that, keep the 3/1 on the field, and then the 3/1 will die later. You know, hopefully our commander stays alive, and we can reuse it. So we've got a couple other effects like this. Demon's Disciple, 3 mana for a 3/1 human cleric. When it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. So this hits your planeswalkers, you know, that your opponents might have knocking around. So this is, you know, it's better, but the artwork is infinitely worse. Speaking of strictly better, Playcrafter is ridiculously good. It's got an extra piece of toughness. How did increments of toughness? What are they? Are they notches on a belt? Maybe, I don't know. 3 mana for a 3/2 human shaman. When it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. Each player who can't discards a card. That's just insane. It's just that with these cards, they just keep piling more and more on top of Fleshbag Marauder. So he's obsolete, really, but I love him deeply. Then there's Merciless Execution, an Orc Warrior version of Fleshbag Marauder. 3 mana, 3/1. When it enters, each player sacrifices a creature. So this whole suite of creatures is fantastic, and I love recurring them. And this commander allows us to do that. Then another couple of cool sort of sacrifice plays. Necrotic Hex, 7 mana for a sorcery. Each player sacrifices 6 creatures. Jesus Christ, that's a lot. But you create 6 tap 2/2 zombie creature tokens. So more than likely this is going to be a full board wipe, but we refill our board state. And if we manage to have, you know, 7 creatures and we don't sacrifice our commander, we'll return all of our creatures back to our hand at end of turn. Although you're probably going to have some hand size issues, so you might end up sacrificing. Then there's Call of the Grave, 5 mana for an enchantment at the beginning of each player's upkeep. That player sacrifices a non-zombie creature. So we get to choose what we sacrifice, so we're going to be returning some cool things back to our hand. At the beginning of the end step, if no creatures are on the battlefield, sacrifice Call to the Grave. So this is a very insidious, you know, keeps chipping away at our opponent's will to live, and that's exactly what I love. Then there's Kuon, Ogre Ascendant. Triple black, at the end of your turn, if 3 or more creatures were put into graveyards from player's turn, flip Kuon. And I'm not going to try and flip myself upside down, and sadly I've not built it so that this does. But at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature. It's enchantment, so it just sits there, just slowly whittling away at our opponents and our own creatures. And we want that. We want to be sacrificing our own creatures to bring them back, cast them again, get their cool effects. Which brings me on to number 4, and this is the sort of backbone of the deck. It's things that do something when they enter, specifically drawing cards, because as we all know, drawing cards is the best thing in Magic. And Callous Blood Mage is one of the best examples. 3 mana for a 2/1 Vampire Warlock. It ends the battlefield. Choose one. Create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with, when this creature dies, you gain 1 life. So nice 2 bodies. If you want to be sacrificing things for some couple of effects, you have 2 bodies there. Or you draw a card, lose a life. Really good. Or exile target player's graveyard. So a nice bit of graveyard hate. If our opponents, maybe a graveyard deck, they're playing Jaragul, Gary Lichlord, something like that. Nuke their graveyard, ha ha ha, you loser. So this card just does so many things, and we want to be sacrificing this to, like a Fleshbag Marauder, returning it back to hand and recasting it again to get another one of these effects. Then there's Dust Legion Zealot, 2 mana, 1/1. Into the battlefield, you draw a card and lose life. 2 mana, drawing a card. It's quite like cycling, really, isn't it? Wonderful. And then we've got Phyrexian Rager, 3 mana for a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. You lose 1 life. Again, these are the sort of things we want to be returning back to hand, recasting, getting mucho value from them. Then there's Wall of Omens, 2 mana, 0/4, Defender, enters the battlefield, draw a card. Again, just great sacrifice fodder. They're just going to sit on the battlefield until we sacrifice them, then return them to our hands, recast them. Or, if you've got a Sun Titan, something like that, that brings back every one of these cards we're talking about here. Then there's the Clattering Augur. 2 mana for a 1/1, it can't block, boo. And into the battlefield, you draw a card and lose 1 life. And then you can pay 4, return it from your graveyard to your hand. So just in case, our commander hasn't hit the field, we can get this back to our hand in another way and just keep the cycle going. Oh Christ, I've messed everything up. We're back. Then we've got the Clockwork Servant. 3 mana for a gnome. Nice. 2/3, it's got adamant. So if it enters the battlefield, if at least 3 mana of the same color was spent to cast it, draw a card. So this is a cool include. I wouldn't usually put this in this sort of deck, but because our commander's returning to our hand and then we can recast it, we can keep drawing those cards. And it's a gnome. Look at that wonderful artwork as well. He's just such a little cutie pie. Then the Sky Scanner, 3 mana, 1/1 with flying. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. Cheap, classic. Love it. Absolutely fantastic. Which now brings us on to number 3. I jumped ahead, but we're here now. And then at number 3, we've got things that make us sacrifice again, but, more advanced versions and more interesting versions that can affect our opponents in multiple different ways. So Rankle, Master of Pranks, is a 4 mana 3/3 with flying and haste. When it deals combat damage to a player, choose any number. Each player discards a card, so, we can fill our graveyard to return things with like a big reanimation spell. Each player loses 1 life and draws a card, so, keeps digging through the deck. And each player sacrifices a creature. And, that sacrifice, if we're staring down an indestructible creature or something, we could choose that. If Rankle's our only creature apart from our commander, sacrifice that Rankle, we get it back, and it's got haste, so we can just keep swinging in and getting this effect. Then, similarly, we've got Smallpox, a card that I love dearly. Double black for a sorcerer. Each player loses 1 life, discards a card, sacrifices a creature, then sacrifices a land. So that can be absolutely backbreaking for your opponent, and you're hitting so many things. People are going to be so unhappy just for 2 mana. And thanks to our commander, we're not going to be losing that much because any creature we sacrifice will be come back to our hand at the end of turn. And, we'll sacrifice a land. Well, maybe you're playing the like Sun Titan package and things like that to return permanents that are CMC 3 or less. Then we've got the big boy. It's Death Cloud. Triple black and X. For a sorcerer, each player loses X life and discards X cards, sacrifices X creatures, and sacrifices X lands. If we've really, splurged onto the field, kept the value train going, kept our opponents down on creatures, and, they're not be able to play something, we can do a small one of these, maybe for 4. Everyone sacrifices 4 lands, 4 creatures. Amazing. It's great when you're behind. It's good when you're ahead. But this is such a fantastic card in the deck. Then we've got Cataclysmic Gearhulk. 5 mana for a 4/5 with Vigilance. It's a construct. And when it enters the battlefield, each player chooses an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a planeswalker from among non-land permanents they control. Then sacrifices the rest. So you are giving your opponents the choice here. Like, I hate giving my opponents choices when I could maybe not, which might be a spoiler for what's coming up. But this card is fantastic. And, you can have this as the artifact or the creature. So you can keep your commander around. This can be the artifact. Then you bring everything else back to your hand at the end of turn. It's wonderfully powerful. Then, we've got balance. Oh, look, falling off. Christ. 2 mana for a sorcery. Each player chooses a number of lands he or she controls equal to the number of lands controlled by the player who controls the fewest. Then, sacrifice the rest. Players discard cards and sacrifice creatures the same way. This is going to bring everyone tumbling back to the Dark Ages. And if you've been doing things like Death Cloud and, Smallpox or even Big Pox, just Pox, there isn't actually a card called Big Pox, I don't think. There should be. But this is fantastic and can really bring everyone crashing back down. And it's great for catching up. It's just a powerful, powerful card. Similarly, we've got Cataclysm, 4 mana for a sorcery. Each player chooses from among the permanents he or she controls an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a land. Then they sacrifice the rest. So just bring everyone crashing back to the Stone Age. We're going to get everything back that's, a creature. Our lands are gone forever, maybe. But if you're building like a Sun Titan package in there, we can then attack with a Sun Titan, cast the Sun Titan, get everything back. And if you're really far ahead on mana, you can float all your mana, do this, and then cast a big spell. So you're massively ahead. Then we got the Magus of the Balance. 2 mana for a 2/2. Need I say more? 5 mana, tap, sacrifice it. We balance. So you just do what balance did before. But it's on a little dude. So the cool thing is, if you keep your commander around, this will go back to your hand, and then you can recast it and balance all over again. Absolutely horrendous, but it works fantastically with the commander. Which brings me on to my number 2. And, our opponents had a few too many choices there. They could pick what they were doing. So let's Tragic Arrogance, why don't we? 5 mana for a sorcery. For each player. No, sorry, I was giving everyone too much credit. They were allowed to do things in my mind. For each player, you choose from among the permanents that player controls an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a planeswalker. Then, each player sacrifices all other non-land permanents they control. So we're going to keep our commander, obviously, whatever other things we've got. But our opponents are going to keep garbage. 0/1 plant tokens. Things like that. We're not going to let them keep their commander. And then all of our creatures are going to come back to our hand. So this is such a fantastic, fantastic card in the deck. Then we've got World Queller, who's quite similar. I really like this card. 5 mana 4/4 at the beginning of your upkeep. You choose a card type. If you do, each player sacrifices a permanent of that type. So, yes, our opponents sadly get to choose what they're doing. But, well, we can choose whatever we want. Could be land, planeswalker, tribal. Whatever you want, you get to target something that's really, causing you some issues. And because this is a creature, if we choose creature, sacrifice this, our commander's on the field, we get it back and we can redeploy it. Or redeploy one of our little enter the battlefield effect creatures. So fantastic, fantastic card. And then, if your opponents are giving you grief, this is the card for you. 4 mana for an elemental incarnation. With Menace. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals their hand. Choose an online card from it, that player discards that card. It's a 3/2. And the cool thing about this is the evoke ability. So you exile a black card from your hand. So it just goes, get rid of it. But this dies straight away. So it comes in, we get the effect, get Thoughtseize something from someone's hand. Really get rid of, that board wipe or that targeted removal spell that we're going to use on our commander. And at end of turn, the grief comes back to our hand. The really cool thing is with these incarnations, if you're using the white one, Solitude, I think. I can't remember. I think it's Solitude. That has flash. So you could do that every single turn if you've got enough cards to exile. You could just keep bringing things back. But Grief is fantastic. We rip something out of the hand and just, get a nice 3/2 maybe. Then Thought Not Seer is fantastic in the deck as well. 4 mana for a 4/4, and Eldrazi might be coming up in a second. Enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals his or her hand. Choose an online card from it and exile that card. When it leaves the battlefield, target opponent draws a card. So, the really cool thing of this is when it enters, you choose someone. So, John over there, I'm sick of you, stop casting spells. And you rip the best spell out of the hand. But when we sacrifice it to something and it dies, and it'll come back to our hand at end of turn, what we can do is choose, right, okay, Peter, you're a nice guy, you can have the card. So you've destroyed John over there, and Peter's going, all right, you're all right, you actually, I like the cut of your jib. So this card is just fantastic. It just works so well. And you can also stack it if you really want to mess with people, so that it comes in, they enter the battlefield, goes on the stack, you sacrifice it, the draw goes on the stack, they draw first, and then you rip something out of their hand. And then you can bring it back to your hand and just do the same thing over again. Wonderful, wonderful card. And look at that eyeball. Wonderful. Which brings me on to my number 1 pick. And the last ability on our commander, you know, the exiling creatures whenever they go to the graveyard, that's what I wanted to focus on with this section. And the card for that is Kaya, Orzhov Usurper. 3 mana for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker. +1, exile up to 2 cards from a single graveyard. You gain 2 life, at least 1 creature card exile this way, if one of them is a creature. Then, -1, exile target non-land permanent would convert to mana cost 1 or less. So that Sol Ring that, you know, your opponent played on turn 1, looking all smug with themselves, well, they don't have it anymore. It's gone to exile. Sorry, John. You know what I mean? Then, the reason I like this card for this deck, -5. It deals damage to target player equal to the number of cards that player owns in exile, and you gain that much life. So if they've had a really long game, you know, loads of things have been dying, we've been exiling everything, this can just absolutely dome someone for 20, 30 damage, just kill them completely. Fantastic. It just works so well in the deck. And, you know, we were talked slightly about some Eldrazi before. Let's talk about some more, because Blight Herder and all the other processors are incredible in the deck. 5 mana for a 4/5 Eldrazi processor. When you cast it, you may put 2 cards your opponents own from exile into the owner's graveyard. So all those exile cards are becoming useful because we're using them. If you do, put 3 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Silent creature tokens onto the battlefield. They have sacrifice this creature, add 1 mana to your mana pool. Amazing. Just does so much work. This is brilliant, and I love the fact that we're using, you know, like the incidental value of exiling creatures that die to make some absolutely great plays. It's just fun. It's just great fun. Then there's Wasteland Strangler, a slightly smaller version of this. 3 mana, 3/2 with Devoid, so it's no colour. It's not coloured. Who cares? Then when it enters the battlefield, put target card an opponent owns from exile into their graveyard. If you do, target creature gets -3/3 until end of turn, and that will kill a lot of commanders. Commanders tend to be quite small, you know, people play them early, or they like to. So this can remove a commander just by using our commander's sort of secondary ability, which is really lovely. And all of these cards, if we sacrifice them to, say, a Fleshbag Marauder, something like that, we can cast them again and get that value again. And we're putting cards into our opponent's graveyards that maybe we could reanimate with like some reanimation spells. Finally, there's Mindraker, the infinitely worse version of this sort of effect. 4 mana for a 3/3 with Devoid. When it enters the battlefield, you may put a card an opponent owns from exile into that player's graveyard. If you do, each opponent discards a card. So you can rip apart your opponent's hand, you know, sort of make it hard for them to play the game. So quite cool all in all. And those are my top 5 cards for this really cool new commander. Why is she alive? I have no idea. Maybe you can tell me in the comments. If you like this, please do like, comment, subscribe. I'm going to be making tons more of this sort of stuff. I'll see you soon. Bye.